For the longest time, the story in AI innovation has been pretty simple, right? Just build a bigger model. More parameters, more data, more compute. It's been this all-out race to scale up. But what if we've been chasing the wrong thing all along?
So let's just start with a really basic question to frame this whole thing. Does a bigger brain automatically equal higher intelligence? I think we all kind of know intuitively that the answer is no. And that's the exact turning point we're seeing in AI right now. The future isn't about just building bigger and bigger models, it's about building smarter systems. Okay, so this slide really lays out the two sides of the coin. On the left, you've got the old way of thinking, model-centric AI. Everything is about the size of the model. But on the right, that's where we're headed, system-centric AI. Here, the focus completely shifts to intelligent system design, using things like planning, tools, and memory to get to something that looks a lot more like real intelligence. Now, to be fair, for a while, just scaling things up worked wonders. It gave us incredible new abilities in models like GPT-3. The thinking was, hey, if we just make it big enough, we can solve any problem. But that approach is really starting to hit a ceiling, and you can see the cracks beginning to form.
I mean, even with the absolute largest models in the world, we still get hallucinations. These answers that sound super confident and plausible, but they're just completely made up. It's a fundamental flaw that just making the model bigger can't seem to fix. And then there's the maddening problem of inconsistency. You can ask the exact same model the exact same question twice and get two wildly different answers. One might be brilliant, and the other's just total nonsense. That kind of unpredictability makes it almost impossible to rely on them for really important, high-stakes jobs. We also run into what's called fragile reasoning. These models can pull off these amazing logical feats 1 minute, but then you change one tiny little thing in the prompt, and their entire reasoning process just completely falls apart. It's like a house of cards. And all of this really points to the core issue. These models have no real autonomy. At the end of the day, a large language model is just an incredibly sophisticated pattern-matching machine. It's not an independent thinker. It's just making a really, really good statistical guess about what word should come next. So if making the model bigger isn't the answer, what is? Well, this is where the big breakthrough idea comes in. What if real intelligence doesn't come from the model by itself, but from how that model interacts with a bunch of other components inside a really well-designed system? And this is what we mean when we say system-centric AI. Instead of putting all our bets on the model alone, we wrap it in a bigger system. You can think of it like giving the model a toolkit, giving it a memory so it can remember things, giving it tools so it can interact with the real world, and giving it a process so it can plan and refine its work. Let's break down what this system actually looks like. So at the core, yeah, you've got the LLM, that's the brain, but we surround it with all these other critical parts. We give it memory to recall past conversations. We give it tools so it can do things like search the web or run a piece of code. We give it a compass for orchestration, which helps it decide which tool to use and when. And maybe most importantly, we give it that loop for self-critique, which lets it improve its own work. It's not just spitting out an answer anymore, it's thinking, acting, and iterating. Okay, all that theory is great, but let's make it real. We're going to walk through a practical example that I think will make the difference between these two approaches crystal clear. So imagine you give an AI a pretty complex task, something like research the latest trends in renewable energy and write a 2-page executive summary. A purely model-centric AI would just try to answer you instantly. It would pull whatever it could from its static, old training data, and what you'd probably get is a messy jumble of outdated facts, some errors, and probably a few outright hallucinations. But a system-centric AI, it's a whole different ballgame. As you can see here, it doesn't just blurt out an answer. First, it thinks about the task. Then it actually makes a plan. It decides to use its tools to search the web for brand new, up-to-the-minute information. It gathers all that stuff, structures it, and then drafts a summary. And then, and this is the absolute key, it goes into a loop of self-critique, refining its own work until it's actually good and accurate. That is intelligence in action. And that example leads us right to the single most important idea in this entire explainer. Seriously, this is the core insight that completely changes how we should be thinking about building AI. So here it is, the crucial point. AI intelligence does not live inside the model. It just doesn't, no matter how many trillions of parameters you throw at it. It lives in the system, in the architecture that we build around the model, that allows it to reason and act and learn over time. Let's use a couple of analogies to really nail this down. A computer chip is unbelievably powerful, right? But on its own, it's just a hot piece of sand. It's totally useless without an operating system to coordinate everything. Same thing with a brain. A brain has incredible potential, but it needs an environment and feedback loops to actually develop intelligence. The model is the chip, the system is the operating system.
So, what does all this mean for everyone out there actually building things with AI? It means your job is changing. The game is no longer just about picking the biggest, fanciest model off the shelf.
The question we should be asking ourselves has changed. The old question was, which model is the best? The new and frankly much more important question is, how do I architect a system that uses the model intelligently? This flips the script from being a consumer of models to an architect of intelligence.
And this is the new competitive edge. You don't necessarily need the biggest, most expensive model to build something amazing. The real advantage comes from building a smarter system, one that can plan, use tools, remember things, and most importantly, evaluate and improve its own performance. That's where the real magic happens.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. The future belongs to the architects, not just the people who have access to the biggest models. Sure, bigger models will keep getting better, but it's the smarter systems that are finally going to unlock what we think of as true intelligence. So the question is, which one are you building?